What's up, everybody? Jensen Cummings here. Thank you, as always, for tuning in. Today is Best Served Podcast 265. We're talking about being a digitally native brand with STEELE Smiley. And this is Best Served Fresh, episode 1 of this series. And STEELE, I want to bring you in now to talk a little bit about your concept, Crisp and Green. Started in Minnesota, you're based up in Minneapolis, and you have some growth happening. And I think this is a very interesting and important time to talk about growth, talk about the uniqueness of what it's going to take for emerging brands, for new brands, as we rethink so much of the arcane model of what a restaurant is. And I really, really appreciate the way that you're going about that. So let's lay down some groundwork for everybody. Let's set the table a little bit. Crisp and Green, what can people expect? What are you all about?
Healthy, fantastic food, culinary driven, fast casual front end, salads, bowls, smoothies, kind of that farm to table vibe, but something that is original and built fresh every single day. Nothing in our store comes from outside. We get fresh produce, we build it in-house every day, and we deliver an exceptional meal. And we're doing an incredible amount of meals. And we're very excited about it, and especially humbled in this time when so many people are having challenges.
Yeah,
Crisp and Green continues to have success, and to some degree, this has actually accelerated our success, which we're very appreciative and humbled by.
There's always opportunity in turmoil, and I think what I really, really like is it seems like you're having to do way less of the pivot than everybody else is having to do, because you created your brand around some of the things that now clearly are crystallizing as mission critical for restaurants. Being digitally native, we struggle so much because we're so face-to-face interaction. It's all about butts and seats. We believe that the only way that we can truly create these memorable experiences is with that guest in the seat for 35 minutes, 40 minutes, whatever your table turns are. And the reality is people need communication in every facet. So I think a lot about on demand. This idea of on demand is something that you see so much in all kinds of digital landscapes. We don't think about that with restaurants. On demand is being where your customers are. Meet your customers where they are. I think it's something so crucial that you guys are doing really, really well. And so we're going to dig into that. But I wanted to touch on a couple other things before we get there. One of the things that you talked about is kind of healthy. Healthy is so easy to say. How do you actually deliver? And I know you're now talking food and fitness, which I'm very fascinated. How are you actually connecting those dots in the way that you're operating your business versus just having a marketing tagline?
Yeah, all great questions. And, Chef, the reality of it is I came to this business with a completely different mindset. I spent 15, 16 years in the fitness business, built and sold my own chain, and then ended up running a large multinational, private equity backed. We had a couple thousand stores in 20 countries, fitness stores. And so I entered into the food game predominantly because I was contractually obligated to stay out of fitness. So for me, it was something where you can't play in this business anymore.
The non-compete forced you to reevaluate.
Absolutely. Oh. Absolutely. I ran the largest company of my kind in the world. And so after that, you got to do something different. And I've been teaching healthy eating for 15, 16 now, 17, 18 years. And the reality of it is that, my options were so limited,
Right.
But I didn't come into this as a restaurateur. And I think to some degree that was a big benefit because I had no preconceived ideas of what it should look like. I didn't consider any of the things maybe that a normal restaurateur would. But the other big difference that I had this time that was very different is that I had a much different resource bucket to play with when I started this brand versus my first business 15 years ago. And so, what I did early on was, I invested, huge amount of money in my digital tools before we even started this business. And, that proved to be certainly, that investment at the time seemed to be a little bit ridiculous. And quite frankly, I got some criticism for doing it. But during COVID, it's an unbelievable pivot that we were able to make. But unfortunately, or fortunately, with a technology solution that I had already had in place. And so, but the other big critical component that I think we miss in the restaurant business is that we learned in the fitness business is that it's all about community. the reality of it is whether we're selling, whether it's full service restaurants, whether it's fast casual, or anywhere in between, with all the different models that exist today, if you have an amazing relationship with that customer and you know what that guest wants and you can anticipate their needs and provide them alternatives, they're going to be very loyal to you, in the good times and the bad times. And so in fitness, when I started, we were largely, my first company was largely credited as one of the first boutique fitness trends in the country. And now you see thousands of them all over the place.
Right.
But I took that same mentality in the restaurant business and said, look, we got to be customer service. We got to be, do community events. We got to be a part of that community. And I think that piece, if done well, can really aid the restaurant business to be more successful into the future.
I am a big fan of what you're talking about right now, because I am such a believer that you have to be a pillar of your community. And restaurants have a unique opportunity because they're both culture and commerce. This is one of the big tenets of what we talk about. And we see that playing out right now. People need that sense of community, and nothing like food connects people more. There just isn't. Just sitting at the table, every memory that we have is around a table. They really, really are. And so I think that's important. And the commerce piece is huge. And this is part of what you're talking about, is like, it's no longer the shopping mall and the strip mall being the epicenter of commerce in a community. JCPenney and Sears are not the traffic driving entity anymore. Any emerging market, emerging neighborhood, it's food, beverage, hospitality, and entertainment. And so I think that's huge. And fitness, you're talking about that too. Now restaurants are creating the foot traffic for the fitness studio, for the yoga studio, for the CrossFit gym, right? For the Orange Theory. They're creating that commerce. And so I think it's fascinating the way that you're thinking about that. It's hugely, hugely important. You're also talking about a mindset shift. Sometimes it's easy to say, well, you don't have the experience in restaurants, so you don't know what it takes. And I've seen plenty of people that had some money and wanted a vanity business and bought a restaurant and took their large fortune and turned it into a small fortune, right? You see lots of that. There's also lots of people that are so institutionally biased, they cannot see the opportunity. They can't see the forest through the trees. So I really like that you're pointing that out, because we have to make a mindset shift. Restaurants have been in survival mode, scarcity mindset for so long, for generations, because 5, 6, 7% profit, we have to shift that. How do you actually get to the 20% profit, the 19% profit that it takes for a business to be viable? If I'm investing in business, a 6% business, I'm not going to invest in that 20%. Right. So this is what you're talking about. And fast casual as a vehicle for that is a much smarter way in this moment, especially. So a rant. I appreciate let me go on a rant. But you really crystallized a lot of things I need people to hear as you're looking to start your business. This is what you have to focus on. Fundamentally, what STEELE's talking about, you have to focus on. So let's go into the way that you're getting into growth, right? Franchise model is the way that you're going about that. So one, why franchise model versus corporately owned? Why was that the model? And then how are you looking at that differently as well? Because I know you're looking at a very different type of model there too.
Yeah, franchising, is what I know. My first chain was corporately owned. I think we had 7 or 8 stores. Partnered with Under Armour, sold the business, and then I was thrown into a franchise chain, the private equity backed one that I operated in. We had roughly 1,200 stores when I arrived. I'd never sold a franchise in my life. 5 years later, 4.5 years later, we had sold around 1,000 stores, open in 20 more countries, and I learned fast. But the reality of it is franchising is not always the way to go. In fact, I tell most people that's probably not the way to go. And there's very few people in the country that know franchising and know it well. There's a lot of experts out there, but believe me, I hear them all the time.
A lot of very
experts.
Few. Oh yeah.
There's very few that have operated at the kind of level that I was very fortunate enough to have, and I got to see it all. Not only in the United States, but also internationally. And so for me, that's what I knew. But, the reality of it is, whether you're building a corporate chain or whether you're building, a franchise model, it all starts with the unit level economics and your ability to make a good business first. And there's been, the road is sort of littered with people that built corporate chains out of initial models that didn't work, and they built franchise chains out of initial models that didn't work. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. Don't push it. Don't try it. So, but if you've got your four-wall economics down, then really the sky's the limit, and you can make all types of pivots and moves and be successful. But you've got to really start with those four-wall economics.
And let's go there a little bit, just at a high level. Let's break that down, maybe just a couple levels for people, because four-wall economics is not something that most operators are thinking about. We are stuck in control and cut and control mentality of prime cost, which I think again is a vulnerability. What you're talking about is a more holistic look at the numbers. So when you're thinking about four-wall economics, when you think about the unit level economics, give us a couple of the things we need to be paying attention to.
Yeah, and it's funny you say prime cost. I mean, I didn't even come into this business having any idea what that term was. Certainly, I know it now as a restaurateur with 28, 30 stores, built or in development. But 4 years ago, when I had one store, I was really looking at my P&L, P&L and my cash position, right? So you deconstruct your business, and you got to watch. In this business, obviously, you watch your labor, you watch your cost of goods, you watch your controllables, obviously your your rent, and making sure that that's 7 to 8% of your budget, hopefully in a well-run business. But the mark of a true restaurateur that can operate it, in my mind, it's got to be great food. It's got to be in a good location. You got to do well in the community. You got to manage the P&L. You got to watch the food. It's now not things that are very difficult. People said, "Steele, have you had success in the restaurant business?" And I said, "Look, nothing's that difficult to do. It's just a lot of things you got to do really, really well." So, and that's different than fitness. I mean, you build the box, you build the programming, people come in, they work out. You got to get the location right. You got to get your membership model right, or whatever. Once you have 1,000, you can get to 2,000 stores. It's not a big deal. But in the restaurant business, you got to do everything well. And so you're highly detailed operators. You're almost insane personalities like me that are watching everything. They can do very well. And my advice is that if in your group, you're not that person, surround yourself with someone who's that person.
Absolutely.
Because if you can watch all the details, you have an opportunity to then franchise or grow your business.
Okay, two things I want to unpack with what you just said, because this whole show is built on what we call unsung hospitality heroes, the lifeblood of this industry, the 11, 12, 13 million people that have committed themselves to this crazy fucking industry, Steele, for some reason or another. Gluttons for punishment. The absolute best, most giving people you will ever meet, and some of the most crazy people, the pirates on the pirate ship, the Island of Misfit Toys, all of that, right? And so there's this contradiction that is so human and so real. And if you create a strong sense of belonging and purpose, well, then you have really, really strong teams, because the restaurants, people's ability to work in a team is as good. I mean, if they were physically gifted enough, they would win Super Bowls. You know what I mean? Like, they are that talented working in a team dynamic. And it's a struggle because you are playing an infinite game, not a finite game. You never know the rules. Like, you barely know the rules. There's never a winner. You're only as good as your next plate. All of these things put huge immense pressure on that. So I really appreciate you pointing that out. And there's two things that you said that I want to touch on. I want to get into the people, but I want to start with one thing really quickly. You are doing so many real estate deals. And so much of what you're doing at that growth phase is you have to be really, really savvy when it comes to real estate. I wanted to touch on that for a second before we get into people. When you're thinking about those deals, what do we need to be thinking about? Because you mentioned 7 to 8%. I like that number, because 8 to 10%, and mostly 10 and 11% is what I hear a lot of operators when they're thinking about their occupancy percentage. And I was like, you're so vulnerable. That number needs to be sub 8, absolutely, for you to even have a chance to get to the kind of 19, 20% numbers that we're focused on. So what are you thinking about? How are you making sure that you end up at that 7% occupancy percentage? How are you thinking about real estate in that way?
And it is very different in this business than it has been in others that I've looked at. In Crispin Green, we're a high volume operation. So I live on the corner of the street of the town. So that's kind of the way I look at this business. And so, we have to be on Main and Main. And we love to be, we don't have to be, but we love to be. So that means that in order to drive that cost down, Chef, I gotta be high volume to make it work. But for your average restaurateur that's saying, look, I love this business. I'm great at what I do. I want to be involved with it. You don't fall in love with the most expensive parcel, or if you fall in love with the most expensive parcel, fall in love with the art of the deal to get the price down.
Yeah.
The other major key, and you know this from your success, is work with that landlord to put a deal together that makes sense. I mean, most people walk into these deals and they just get totally, they signed horrible deals. Yes, and they're not confident with what they're doing. They may not know what they're doing. There's not a business person attached to that group. I mean, they're restaurateurs, maybe they're food fanatics. But the art of the deal, your success is largely driven on those macro factors that happen before you even walk in and open and serve your first meal. So, if you can get all those details right, you have a chance to be successful. And again, the problem with this business is that there's not one detail, there's not 5 details, there's not 15 details, there's 50. So you kind of got to knock them
every minute. Yeah. I appreciate that. Totally stealing the corner of the street in the town. Amazing. Yeah. I'm a big fan of the catchphrases. That's a really, really good one. People talk about location, location, location. I was like, no. Those aren't the 3 L's. It's landlord, lease, location. Those are your 3 L's, because landlords and leases are one of the top reasons that restaurants actually close. You need to have a strong relationship. You're in the relationship business. It better start with those 4 walls and the landlord, the relationships that you have. So important. And so going into that, the team, hiring the right team, making sure that they understand the culture, understand not just bodies. We call them bodies or hands in the industry, because we're just trying to fill space. Because again, we're in that scarcity mindset. You have a very different approach. You're finding the exact right team and making sure that you play to your strengths and you hire to your weaknesses, right? That's hugely important. Go there a little bit, because we struggle in the industry.
Yeah, I mean, there's 2 things you got to think about, right? Your team, one of which we all know in the restaurant business, is the team that touches your customers. And I have a very good phrase I use for that. People need to be inspirational or aspirational. And they need to be something that's exciting. There needs to be something exciting about that person. I mean, we all read energy, whether we're good at it or whether we're bad at it. We all know that one person in our lives that we are around that just steals our energy. And you say, man, every time I run into Jason, I'm tired. Or every time I see Jennifer, man, she kills me. I leave and I'm tired every time. You can't take energy stealers, which I think we all kind of know that term, but put people in front of the customers that are great, that have some level of inspiration or aspiration to their personality. And that's the first step. And then they got to be loyal and they got to be the right price and all these types of things. And you got to work with them and then support them. But that's only one piece of the equation. The other piece of the equation is, if you have a growth brand, what everybody forgets, and I meet a lot of franchisees that come to me and say, Steele, I want to be a part of Crispy & Green. I mean, we're so fortunate to meet so many people every week that want to be a part of the brand. And the first thing I tell them is that build an infrastructure around you, so you're building a business. You're not just building a restaurant. And people forget about the business side of the business. Right. It's the food, it's the passion and the love. But there's a business that goes along with it. How are you marketing that brand? How are people accounting for your brand? Is it correct? Is it gap oriented? Is it right? Who's recruiting the talent for your store? And maybe in a small business enterprise, it's one person wears multiple hats.
Of course.
But you got to be good at all those different things in order to put together a brand that has an opportunity to be successful, especially now because the stakes are higher.
You got to have the self-awareness and the humility and then the hustle to be able to say, this is not one of my strengths, even though we think everything is one of our strengths, and then find the person that it is. And then this is a struggle too, is actually empower them. Don't give them a title and then manipulate and control and micromanage and all these things. You have to actually empower them to do what they do well. You, as an operator, for everybody out there, you have to know the job well enough to evaluate somebody else's ability to do it at the level that you need it. Yeah, that doesn't mean that you have to do every job, because the more jobs that you do, the worse you are at every single job. Aces in their places matters. I feel like you and I could just go back and forth with Sam for an entire episode, which I really, really love. So I appreciate that. All right. So I want to go into the technology side of what you're doing. This is restaurant people. We're Luddites. We make things with our hands. Everything is tactile. Everything is face to face. So all of a sudden, when we go to this, which I believe is an opportunity for a table touch, I think if you start to think about the things that you're good at, table touch, interact with your guests, ask meaningful questions. This is an opportunity. This is not a barrier, an opportunity. And I know that you have gone all in on that. So let's go there. Technology. What do we need to be paying attention to? What are you doing that you feel like gives you that, in this moment, truly a competitive advantage versus just being something that's innate in your business?
Yeah, and you know, one thing just to quickly touch on before that is
Please.
this idea of the people. You got to take care of the people too.
You have
You
to.
know, you got to make sure. You know, we're doing yoga classes for our teammates inside the store. We're doing, you know, meditation classes now,
Wow.
6 feet, 20 feet apart, or whatever we're
Love
doing.
it.
But we're still giving them an opportunity to feel better. So you got to make sure you take care of your people so they don't leave too. But assuming you're doing that to technology, you know, we spent, you know, way too much money on our technology early off. And we did it because, you know, I started this business fortunately with resources. So I had the ability to, you know, have the technology in place so that we would be successful as we continue to grow, not knowing that that would pay off with the current challenges. But I would advise everybody to, you know, you can partner with a lot of great technology companies out there to make sure it works. And you don't have to build your own custom programs like we did here. I mean, we were a you know, a digitally native brand from the first store. You could you know, pull up our app and download, you know, order your meals, you know, order your meal kits, have it delivered to your house, you know, anywhere in the metro area here in less than 5 minutes and pay online. I mean, from the very first day. So we had all of that access, but I spent a lot of money to do it, and not everyone's going to make that decision. But if you do end up partnering, I mean, my big advice, and 99% of the businesses out there will partner with someone for technology. Don't assume that they know what they're doing, you know, and watch what they do, and, you know, watch and learn your own technology. You know, we have a whole division of my company now that's all they do is technology for this brand, that, you know, they make sure, because so much of my business today is digitally driven. Right. So we've got that people, that's all they do. But certainly that was never part of my org chart when I started the business. I never envisioned it would be that big of a part of the business. I just knew it was something that would come in the future. I didn't know the future would be 2020. Yeah. But if you partner with an outside, you know, manufacturer that has off the shelf things, I mean, you need to really make sure that you know it well enough to be able to make the manipulations that you need to make that fit for your business. You know, it's almost like saying, here's a house, we're going to build you the infrastructure. And then you almost have, in many cases, finish the inside of the house to the colors you like, or the walls are where you want them. Most of these brands aren't going to do that for you. So you have to take a very big vested interest. Don't turn over the keys, if you will, and let them give you a solution, because 9 times out of 10, it's going to be wrong, and you're going to end up having to fix it. So
that's it. Yeah.
But you got to have it.
You got to have it. We're not trying to convince anybody that you should be completely resilient when it comes to digital. That is a foregone conclusion. It has been, and now it is absolutely critical. There is no other way. What you need to figure out is what is exactly right for you. You got to get good at asking the questions, to your point, to make sure that you don't get this cookie cutter thing that does not work for you, because that's the reality of it. And then the technology works against you, and then you say, well, this doesn't work. You're right. The technology does work. You didn't understand how to work it. There's a very big difference there that I think is super important for people to understand. To understand broadly, I want to kind of understand how much on the front end you did invest. And the reason that I ask is because, to your point, it's not financially viable for a lot of people who aren't having the type of resources and aren't looking at growth from the get. So I understand that. Yet I do think there's some opportunities. I think of independently owned restaurant networks that are taking in dues. And I imagine that if you have 250 members, if you're able to get buy-in from all of them, you could build something proprietary for yourselves and become the warehouse of where people are interacting in that space to own your customer. So I'm interested, can you broad scope give us an idea of what it might take for somebody or a group of somebody to invest?
I mean, I will come with a little different piece of advice. I mean, I would never build your own technology solution.
Okay.
And the reality of that is that, you know, and I take a page from my last company. I mean, we were a global fitness operator. We started with a $2 million budget to build our own operating system. It turned into about a $9 million cluster.
So big.
And, you know, and we fixed it. But the reality of it was, technology is always 5 times more than what you thought it's going to be. And even in this company, my early investments, you know, were always compounded by more investment. Now it's full-time people, and it's people, you know, that are there making it work. So I would invest in an off-the-shelf something and then modify it. But you know, the problem with that is that you got to really make sure that you own your customers, that you And I will say this, unless you come from a technology background, right? Because that's a big learning curve for a lot of restaurateurs to say, geez, now I got to build my own technology. There's off the shelf stuff that will probably work pretty well for you, but they probably won't get you, if you're lucky enough and talented enough to get to the size where you're growing, you're going to need to do something else. But early on, you're probably okay. But learn the technology, understand what happens, who owns that customer. Make sure you're not locked into a multi-year contract. Make sure it's affordable. What happens, what's their SLA or service level agreement? How much uptime do they have? What happens if it goes wrong? Who's your customer support for when your customers get double billed or triple billed? Are those calls coming to you? So there's a lot of details that have to be involved. But backing up for 1 minute, you could have the best technology solution. You could build your own. You could buy your own. But if you don't have a relationship with your customer, it doesn't really matter, right? It starts with that social media. It starts with that person inside the store. It starts by knowing their name, what they love. When they come in your full service restaurant or inside your fast casual, you should take the opportunity to know these people. And even if you're fortunate enough, like Krispy Kreme, to have thousands of guests, my store managers still know my top guests by name. They know what they like. We're always there helping that person. So, when the world does get more challenging and you've got that big catcher's mitt of the digital solution there waiting, at least they're loyal to you to be able to trust your brand to deliver a good experience and give you a chance. A lot of people would buy the solution. They don't know their customers and they say, hey, I got the technology, but I don't have the touch. I don't have the touch points. I mean, it starts with that social engagement and our ability to have that relationship with that customer to be loyal to you.
Yeah, you can have the Maserati. If you don't have any gas in it, it's not going anywhere. Right. I think that's a very, very good point. I like that there's still the investment. You're investing then in understanding the technology, which is investment of time, of brain calories, right, of potential money, and you're also investing in the customization of it. So even off the shelf, I like that you're still needing to invest. It is not plug and play. So make sure you really, really understand.
And know your rep too, because whoever's selling you that technology, I mean, make sure that they're there. Ask them, say, hey, how long you been, with this company? Who am I going to call when it doesn't work? Who do you report to? Get that person's number, right? So to some degree, you've got this little bit of an intelligence base of knowledge so that when it doesn't go right, which will happen, it's happened to all of us, you know who to call and you know how to get out of that mess. And it's almost protecting your backside so that you know that, hey, I'm covered here. I know that when my rep leaves and goes to another company, I still have someone to call. And it's always at the worst time. It's at your sister's wedding. It's at your dad's celebration dinner. It's at Thanksgiving. I mean, it's going to happen though.
I appreciate that. We're going to wrap this. I want to give you just a moment. You mentioned the guest interaction, and that is always going to be paramount, no matter what, no matter how you have positioned your business. The ability to communicate clearly, consistently, and build relationships, create that sense of belonging on, again, all sides of the equation, I think is so, so important. So take a moment. The guests that you have, I can tell you feel really lucky that thousands of people come to your establishments. So, so important. How do you make sure and nurture those relationships ongoing? Give us a little bit of insight there as we kind of wrap this up.
For me, it's about step one, make sure you take care of your teammates inside the stores. If you take care of them, they're going to take care of your guests. So, sometimes as restaurateurs, we're passionate about our business, and so for me, I may not be the daily touch point inside my stores, but I know that the people that touch the people in the stores, maybe they're a little bit different approach and they're softer, and I'm an intense guy. I mean, I'm all in, right? And sometimes you got to put the people in front of the people who have the ability to manage the right people, but be educated in yourself enough to know where your strong points are and where your blind spots are. So, so they say, okay, as long as your team's managed well, the people in the store are happy, they're going to take care of your guests. It's not worth it. If there's a mistake, make sure you cover that charge. I mean, make sure the customer's right. Sometimes they're crazy. The customer's upset about something. It doesn't matter. Make sure you make them leave with a smile on their face. We all have masks on. Smile with your eyes, Make sure that customer knows that you're there and you care. Greet people when you walk in the door. Make sure you touch those tables. Make sure you get everything off the floor. Your units start not at the door. They start 20 feet back when they're walking up to the store. Make sure there's not a lot of garbage around. Make sure your place is that third destination. Look, in wellness, if the service experience and the customer experience isn't there, we don't have wellness. We never had fitness. It was all about those relationships in that community. But in restaurants, we can all learn to be better at that community because that's what makes or breaks most restaurants. Honestly, it's not the food, it's the community.
That's it. I so appreciate once again that you have a very forward-thinking concept. You have a very unique concept. You have something that has the infrastructure built around it to have the massive growth opportunity. You have the resources, all of those things. Yet we're finishing with it's still the pure forms of hospitality that are going to be the bedrock of your business. So you have to stay so grounded to the fact that it's all about those relationships, and you are the steward of those relationships. So I really appreciate that. STEELE Smiley, amazing conversation. Really appreciate the work. Can't wait to check out the growth, and we'll find a place and a time to intersect at one of your locations so you and I can swap some more sayings and catchphrases and make some t-shirts, some co-branded t-shirts. I see it in the future, my friend. Take care. Have a great day.
All right. Cheers.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.
All right, everybody. STEELE Smiley. That is exactly the type of dynamic thinking that we really need to cultivate the future of this industry. We have to build this industry anew. It's going to take both, you saw, very new thinking, and it's still going to take the purest sense of creating that sense of belonging that is always and will always be the foundation of hospitality. That's our podcast 265. So grateful to once again have the opportunity. We talked digitally native brand, yet once again, we talked about you have to be dynamic. It's people, it's hospitality, and it's technology in this time more than ever. That is it for this episode. Thank you all, as always, for tuning in. Cheers.